Younger sister lost her job on a Tuesday. By Friday, she was sleeping on my couch. I didn't think twice about it. She's my sister. She'd gone through a rough stretch, layoff from a marketing firm that downsized half its staff in one afternoon, and she had nowhere to go. Her lease was up, her savings were thin, and I had a 2-bedroom apartment with a spare room we used mostly for storage. Of course I said yes, of course. My husband's reaction was, not of course. How long? He asked, not even looking up from his phone. Just until she finds something. A few weeks, maybe. He made a sound. Not a word. Just a sound. The kind that means I don't like this, but I'm not going to say it outright. Because then I'd have to defend it. I told myself he'd warm up. He was just surprised. Anyone would be a little caught off guard. He didn't warm up. The first week, he came home from work and walked past my sister like she was a piece of furniture he'd learned to step around. She said hi every single time. Genuinely with a smile. He'd give her a nod, barely, and disappear into our bedroom. I'd hear the TV go on. I'd hear him order his own dinner sometimes, not asking if we wanted anything. My sister never complained. She was applying to jobs every day, rewriting her resume, doing everything right. She kept the apartment cleaner than I did, honestly. She bought groceries. She cooked dinner twice a week and left portions for both of us in the fridge, with little sticky notes. Made extra. Hope you like it. The sauce is in the small container. Those little notes that made me want to cry because she was trying so hard to not be a burden. My husband ate the food without saying anything. 2 weeks in, he sat down next to me on the couch after she'd gone to bed. So when is she actually leaving? She's had 3 interviews this week. She's trying. I'm just asking a simple question, and I'm giving you a simple answer. She's looking. He looked at the wall for a moment. I just feel like I can't relax in my own home. I stared at him. I actually stared at him. My sister had been nothing but quiet, grateful, and considerate. She tiptoed around him. She adjusted her whole schedule so she wouldn't be in his way in the mornings. She went to coffee shops to work so he could have the apartment to himself on weekends. She's barely here, I said. She's always here. I didn't say anything else that night, but I lay awake for a long time, turning that conversation over and over. 3 weeks after she arrived, she got a job offer. A good one. A digital marketing role at a company downtown. She told us at dinner, and I hugged her so hard she laughed. My husband said congrats and reached for the bread. She moved out 2 weeks after that, into a place with a friend from college. The apartment felt quieter after she left. I thought my husband would be relieved. I thought things would go back to normal and we'd move on. What I didn't expect was his brother. His brother called on a Sunday morning in late October. I was still in my pajamas, drinking coffee, half watching something on my laptop. My husband took the call in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to listen, but the apartment isn't big, and his voice carries, "Of course, man. Yeah, as long as you need, don't even worry about it." He hung up and came into the living room, and I said, "Who is that?" "My brother. He's going through some stuff. I told him he could stay with us for a while." I put down my coffee mug. "You told him he could stay?" "Yeah, without asking me." He blinked like this was a strange thing to say. "He's my brother. He needs help." And I sat there, very quietly, processing the fact that I had come to him, carefully, to ask if my sister could stay, and he had made me feel guilty about it for 3 weeks. And now he had just decided, without a single word to me, that his brother was moving in. "Okay," I said, because I didn't know what else to say, because I was still calculating something in my head, something I didn't have the math for yet. His brother arrived the following Friday with a truck bed full of stuff. Not a bag. Not a suitcase. Stuff. A gaming setup. A mini fridge. 3 boxes of what turned out to be mostly shoes. My husband helped him carry it all up, and they set up the spare room. My sister's old room, the one she'd kept immaculate, with a strip of LED lights and a second monitor and a beanbag chair. I stood in the doorway and watched. It'll just be a month or 2, My husband told me that night. What's going on with him? I asked. What kind of stuff? Just some personal things. He needs space. From what? From everything. You know how he gets. I didn't push it. I told myself I was being supportive. I told myself this was what you did. You showed up for family, even when it was inconvenient, even when it disrupted your life. I believed that. I still believe that. What I didn't believe anymore, not after the next few weeks, was that my husband believed the same thing, because it became very clear, very quickly, that his definition of family had a much narrower border than mine. His brother did not tiptoe. He was not up early applying to jobs. He slept until noon, emerged to eat entire boxes of cereal and leave the empty containers on the counter, played video games until 2 in the morning with the volume on a level that seeped through the walls. And my husband said nothing. I said once, gently, "Do you think he could keep it down after midnight? I have an early start." My husband looked at me like I'd asked something unreasonable. "He's going through a hard time," he said. I heard my own voice in those words. I had said almost the exact same thing about my sister, and he had made that same face, not at me, but I'd seen it. The slight pulling at the corners of his mouth, the impatience he thought he was hiding. Week 3 of his brother's stay. I stopped cooking dinner for 3. Not dramatically. I just started making enough for 2 and leaving his brother's portion to my husband to figure out. My husband noticed. He didn't say anything, but I could feel him noticing. Week 4, I started tracking dates. My sister had stayed 3 weeks and 2 days. It had been 29 days since his brother moved in. Week 5, his brother backed his truck into my car in the parking lot downstairs. Scraped the entire rear panel. He came upstairs and told my husband first. My husband came and told me like he was delivering bad news on someone else's behalf. He feels really bad about it, my husband said. Is he going to cover the repair? Pause. He's kind of tight right now. I nodded slowly. I walked to the window. I looked out at the parking lot. The repair estimate came back at $1,400. I paid it, out of my own account. The account that was technically joint, but that I was the primary contributor to, because I had a full-time salary and his brother, apparently, was kind of tight. I paid it and I didn't make a scene, and I went to bed that night feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger. Something colder than anger. A kind of clarity. I started thinking about what I would do differently if my sister called me tomorrow and said she needed help again. And I realized I would still say yes. Without hesitation, because that's who I am. And I realized something else. My husband would still make that face. He would still ask how long. He would still eat the food she left in the fridge and not say thank you. Nothing had changed in him. The only thing that had changed was that I was finally seeing it clearly. The conversation happened on a Saturday, 6 weeks after his brother moved in. I'd had a long week. I came home on Friday to find the kitchen a disaster, dishes stacked in the sink, a pot on the stove with something burnt into the bottom, the trash overflowing. My husband was in the living room watching the game. His brother was in the spare room. I stood in the kitchen doorway for a long moment. I didn't clean it up. That was new for me. I made myself a bowl of cereal, ate it standing at the counter, and went to bed. In the morning, my husband asked why I hadn't cleaned up the kitchen. "I don't live alone," I said. "We were busy last night. So was I." He looked at me for a moment. "Are you in a mood?" And that was it. That was the sentence that unlocked everything I'd been quiet about for 6 weeks. "I need to talk to you about something," I said. "Can we sit down?" We sat at the kitchen table. I looked at him. He looked back, wary. "When my sister stayed here," I said, "you asked me every week how much longer. You said you couldn't relax in your own home. You barely spoke to her. She cooked for us, bought groceries, kept everything clean, and you treated her like she was imposing." He started to say something. I kept going. "Your brother has been here for 6 weeks. He doesn't clean up after himself. He damaged my car and isn't paying for the repair. He's up until 2 a.m. And I can't sleep. And you have said nothing. You haven't asked him how much longer. You haven't said anything to him about the noise or the mess or the car. Silence. So I want to understand, I said. What's the rule? Is the rule that family can stay when they need to? Because I thought that was the rule, and I was okay with that rule. Or is the rule that your family can stay and mine is an inconvenience? My husband looked at the table. That's not fair, he said. Which part isn't fair? He didn't answer. I paid $1,400 out of my own pocket for the damage to my car, I said. I haven't said anything about it to your brother. I haven't made it awkward. But I need you to acknowledge what's happening here, because I'm not going to pretend I don't see it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'll talk to him about the car. That's not really the point. I know, he said, quietly. And something in his face shifted, not into guilt exactly, but into something adjacent to it, like he was looking at a picture he'd been avoiding. We didn't resolve everything that morning. That's not how it works. You don't have one conversation and suddenly 7 years of patterns rearrange themselves. But it was the first time I had said it out loud, plainly without softening it so much, that the point got lost. His brother moved out the following weekend, not because I asked him to. My husband had that conversation, and I wasn't in the room for it, and I didn't ask what was said. He moved into a friend's place in a neighboring town. He and I said goodbye in the hallway, and it was polite, and that was fine. That night, my husband and I ordered pizza and sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. I'm sorry, he said. Just that, I nodded. I didn't realize how differently I was treating the two situations, he said. I think I did, a little. But I told myself it wasn't that. I know, I said. I don't want to be that person. I looked at him. Then don't be. We watched something forgettable on TV. I fell asleep before it ended, which I hadn't done in weeks because I'd been staying up listening for noise through the wall. The silence was so good. I want to be clear about something. For anyone who might be in something similar and wondering if they're overreacting, you are not overreacting. The thing that wears you down isn't always something dramatic. It's not always a blow-up or a moment you can point to and say that's the thing that broke us. Sometimes it's just the accumulation of small, quiet inequalities. The way his needs are always urgent and yours are always negotiable. The way your discomfort is a mood, but his discomfort is a problem to solve. The way you've learned to ask permission for things he simply decides. And the moment you name it, clearly, without apologizing for the naming of it, is the moment everything shifts. Not always in a way that saves things, but always in a way that changes you. I still talk to my sister every week. She's doing really well at the new job. She came over for dinner a few weeks ago, and my husband asked her about the role and actually listened to the answer. Small thing. But I noticed. Some things do change. Slowly. If you're willing to say what you see. I keep coming back to the kitchen. Not the argument. Not the moment I finally said everything out loud. Just the kitchen, the night before, when I stood there looking at the mess and made myself walk away. That was the real turning point, not the words I said the next morning. The decision, quiet and private, to stop cleaning up a situation I didn't create. There's something I've learned about how things play out, not in some mystical sense, but in the most practical one. The way you treat people tends to come back around, not always dramatically, not always fast, but the patterns you build inside a marriage, inside any close relationship, have a way of holding their shape until something forces you to look at them directly. My husband wasn't a villain. He was someone who had gotten comfortable with a set of unspoken rules that worked in his favor, and he'd never been asked to examine them. That's not destiny. That's just what happens when no one names it. What I had to find, and it took longer than I'd like to admit, was the clarity to see what was actually in front of me. Not what I hoped was there, not what I'd been telling myself for months so I could keep the peace. I had to think honestly about what I was watching happen, and that kind of honesty requires something a lot of people underestimate. It's not dramatic. It's not a moment of rage. It's just the willingness to stop explaining away what you already know. And then there's the harder part, doing something with that clarity, saying it out loud, sitting down at a kitchen table and speaking plainly, without softening the point until it disappears. That took everything I had that morning. My hands weren't shaking, but something else was. Some part of me that had been trained over years to make myself smaller so the room felt more comfortable for everyone else. Pushing through that, staying in the conversation when everything in me wanted to back down and apologize and say, never mind. That's the part I'm most proud of, not the words themselves, the staying. I think about my sister, who drove to our apartment with 2 bags and a quiet determination to not be a burden. She made dinner. She left sticky notes. She got up every morning and applied to jobs. She had every reason to feel defeated, and she just didn't. I watched her do that, and I thought I was just proud of her. I didn't realize I was also watching a version of who I needed to be. The $1,400 for the car repair still stings a little, if I'm honest. But I'd pay it again. Because the moment I chose not to make a scene, not to blow everything up, but to wait and handle it with my head instead of just my hurt, that was the moment I stopped reacting and started deciding. There's a real difference between those two things, and I felt it. I'm not going to tell you my marriage is perfect now. I'm not going to tie this up cleanly. What I'll say is this: that Saturday morning conversation changed something, and the only reason it happened is because I finally stopped waiting for him to notice on his own and said what I saw. Clearly, kindly, without flinching, that's all it was. And somehow, that was everything.